Thank you, everyone. That'll get the blood flowing in all ways. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Director Anderson? Director Buchanan?
Here.
Director Colson?
Here.
Director DeWitt?
Here.
Director Durante?
Here.
Director Frega?
Here.
Director Fuentes?
Here.
Director Hobson?
Here.
Director Lewis?
Here.
Director McGallis?
Here.
Director Melvin?
Here.
Director Pang? Director Ross?
Here.
Director Totten? Director Troiani?
Here.
Chairman Dillard?
Here.
13 present with 3 absent.
Great. Thank you, Madam Secretary. The first item is item 3A, and it is the approval of the minutes from our meeting held right before Christmas on December 17th, 2015. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Director Ross, seconded by Director Buchanan, that we approve the minutes of December 17th, 2015. Why don't we take a roll call, Audrey, on this, and that way we'll have a baseline roll call if we could.
Alrighty. Director Buchanan?
Yes.
Director Colson?
Yes.
Director DeWitt?
Yes.
Director Durante?
Aye.
Director Frega? Director Fuentes?
Aye.
Director Hobson?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director McGallis?
Aye.
Director Melvin?
Yes.
Director Ross?
Yes.
Director Troiani?
Aye.
Director Dillard? Chairman Dillard, sorry?
Yes.
13 ayes and 3 absent.
Perfect, thank you. Item 4 is the public comment segment of the meeting, and today we have no speaking. We do have 3 people, okay. Oh, 3B, I'm sorry. Somehow 3B is off of my little list here. What's 3B?
It's basically just the report
Sorry.
coming out of executive session on the closed session minutes that we had discussed.
My guess is it's the end of my, it's on the, that's all right, we'll do it now. 3B is the report coming out of the executive session that we had on December 17th, 2015. Are there any questions? You want to add anything?
Well, yeah, as you know, the board did meet an executive session on December 17th to go over the closed meeting minutes from prior closed sessions that had been held. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, public bodies are required to review the closed meeting minutes periodically to determine whether a need for confidentiality continues to exist with respect to all or part of those minutes. The board determined that based on their review, several executive session discussions can be released, and they will be once we've terminated this meeting today. The remaining confidential minutes of closed meetings will continue to stay closed to inspection by the public because the need for confidentiality still exists as to those minutes. The board will continue to review these minutes to determine whether any changes in circumstances indicate that they may be made available for review. Mr. Chairman, this determination is made with the consensus agreement of the board.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? I'm sorry, I was going to do this right at the end when we go into executive session again today. Director Melvin moves that we adopt this report, seconded by Director DeWitt. Is there leave for the attendance roll call? Seeing no objection, leave is granted. And now we'll move on to item 4, which is no speakers in the public comment section for today, if that's correct. Item 5 is the Executive Director report, Leanne Redden. Leanne?
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to ask for your indulgence to kind of spend a few moments looking back on what the RTA accomplished in 2015 with us and the service boards. And I think the sort of hallmark of 2015 was a year of collaboration, and ultimately that was the collaboration between us and the service boards. But the bottom line here is that ultimately impacts and benefits the riders of our system. We've had, I think, been very successful in turning plans and investments into really benefiting the riding public. But before I get too far ahead of myself, and I have nothing to change a slide. Where's the keyboard? Oh, there it is. Sorry. Not good planning on my part, right? But before I get too far ahead of myself, just to touch base on where we stand in terms of the state's funding that they owe us. As of today, it is $278 million. The cost in 2015 for the RTA to maintain the short-term borrowing program that partially funds that delinquency totaled $1.495 million. So it comes at a price. Wrong buttons. So last year, I think, as I mentioned, collaboration. We partnered with the service boards to advocate for more capital funding, for transit parity for the region's transit system, while really also looking to improve access to the system throughout the region. We worked with CTA and PACE to launch the Transit Signal Priority Program. You can see here in the photo here on the bottom left. And TSP, as we call it, is really technology that we funded that enabled, for example, CTA to reintroduce CTA's Ashland and Western Express bus services, two of their busiest routes on the system. We also directly allocated ICE funding that supported the development of the Ventra mobile app, which I think many of us are using regularly. The ICE funding also allowed for extra service for the Blackhawks rally and other special event activities that occurred throughout the year. It also funded the installation of the automated signs. Joe Varsha just ran through some of that in his earlier presentation, the real-time information at CTA bus stops. But also that's been really beneficial in connecting in and supporting the Loop Link implementation that opened just a couple of weeks back. We partnered with Metra and the City of Chicago and Amtrak on supporting funding for the future redevelopment of the Union Station project. We co-hosted the Transportation Symposium, which is, when I say co-hosted, but the RTA staff, in collaboration with the service boards, really did a lot of work to pull that event together. It is really sort of our hallmark activity for the year with the service boards to improve outreach to minority contractors and improve our contracting ability across the transit and the broader transportation system. That's the photo you see at the South Shore Cultural Centre. As one of the service board CFOs at this year's board's finance committee said, last year was the best collaboration he's seen in terms of service board and RTA work together. And as I mentioned, that really benefits our riders. This year, though, I'd like to share our achievements by showing how they align to the regional strategic plan that we have developed in concert with the service boards. And as you probably recall, it had So the first goal is to provide valuable, accessible, and attractive transportation options. To support this goal, our Finance, Innovation and Technology Department and our Capital Programming Planning and Performance Groups worked to directly allocate and fund the program, the $34 million of ICE funding. I've touched on some of those projects already. But we also initiated 16 new community planning projects currently underway and completed 11 existing projects. Additionally, we programmed $880,000 through the community planning program to fund 8 transit-oriented development projects. These will range from convening small groups of developers to identify development opportunities in Calumet Park's Metro Station to improve transit connections to major employment centres in DuPage County, for example. In addition, Michael already talked about the enhancements and the improvements in the Mobility Services Department to enhance the customer experience. As we've mentioned, we partnered with the City of Chicago and what it resulted in was closing our customer service centre downtown, but co-locating our staff into 4 city sites, customer service and service. Sorry, I'll get the department name right. City of Chicago Department of Family and Support Services to really provide one-stop shopping for people with disabilities as well as our senior riders who have to come in and work with us on their pass applications. That actual item and some of the further enhancements in that program are up for the board contract approval just in a few moments. So moving on to the second criteria and the second goal within our strategic plan is ensuring financial viability. To support this goal, our finance group with IT and technology did some really important work. The RTA kicked off our budget process in the summer with unanimously approving our funding marks or our funding amounts in August, which was unprecedented, and a month ahead of our statutory deadline. As you know, the board approved unanimously the operating and the capital budgets last month. The capital program was about $3.9 billion over 5 years from 2016 through 2020, and that included $872 million in capital expenditures programmed for 2016. In 2015, we programmed approximately $1 billion worth of capital projects with no funding from the state. This funding level was achieved through a very creative and of layering of funding sources, including just $500,000 of for CTA from a TIFIA loan from the federal government, a low-interest TIFIA loan. We were also able to supplement the capital program by RTA and the service boards issuing bonds to support the capital efforts that they're investing in. The RTA have worked close as RTA and the service boards continue to work closely, though, with IDOT, as we know their financial situation, and working closely with them on the capital side to address cash flow issues and allow the most essential capital projects continue to advance. We've talked about with the board the passing of the Federal Transportation Bill at the end of the year, the FAST Act, and the state's recent announcement of its selling some general obligation bonds earlier this month. Our region but we still continue to have serious capital needs that we need to address. Last month, the board also authorized the RTA to sell just over $100 million in GOB bonds, general obligation bonds, I should say, and the competitive sale and issuance of up to $150 million in working cash notes. The bonds will finance capital projects in 2015. Our capital programming and planning group secured $4.9 million in congestion mitigation federal funds to program a total of $5.2 million in capital projects throughout the system to focus on improving access to the transit system. These funds will support 11 transit-related projects from 2016 through 2020 and build transit connections to retain and attract new riders across the region's system. This is the second time that the RTA has been successful in accessing these federal dollars. The first time we did this a couple of years back, we were able to secure $2 million, so we've essentially doubled the amount of money we've been able to invest. Those projects from the initial $2 million are actually moving into construction. The RTA credit rating is among the best in the public sector. Our bond rating was recently affirmed as AA with Standard & Poor's, Fitch, and Moody's. Thanks to the work of our finance group, the RTA also received 2 awards from the GFOA. For the 19th and the 20th years, respectively, we have received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award and the Certification of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for our comprehensive annual financial report. Our third goal is the promotion of a green and livable and prosperous region. And thanks to our capital and planning performance group, we did some great work in terms of completing the first ever visitor survey that really, I think, validated information showing that our transit system, that visitors perceive our transit system as a reliable economic means to travel around the entire 6-county region, as well as providing us with a lot of other good data that we can use going forward. We published a robust set of performance reports also again in last year. The regional report card and the sub-regional report look at our region's transit providers' performance over a 5-year period. The RTA also analyzes performance of our regional system relative to our peer transit operators around the country, our peer transit region around the country. And we did 2 reports last year, the regional peer review and the sub-regional peer review. In 2013, the regional peer review released in 2015, from the 2013 peer report released in 2015, and the reason for that delay is because the numbers come through FTA and it takes them that long to sort of scrub all the data and get it back to all of us, was very helpful in showing our standings and where we stand compared to our peers. In 2013, RTA passenger miles traveled exceeded 4 billion for the 3rd consecutive year. And despite unusually high capital investment in 2013 related to the Red Line reconstruction and the Englewood flyover project and the purchase of transit vehicles, the region still expended less than half of what the New York region, for comparison, expended for capital on a per capita basis. That's an improvement from where we were back in 2010, for example. Our per capita expenditure was less than 1/5 of what New York is spending. So it sort of gives you some relative context for sort of where we're at and what our needs are. To our region's credit, for 3 years running, from 2011 to 2013, the last year for which we have data, the RTA's the system had the lowest operating cost per passenger mile of the systems in the country's top 10 metropolitan areas. And from 2009 through 2012, the RTA's regions system ranked first in our peer group for travelling the longest distance in service without experiencing major technical failures. And we ranked third in 2013. This even as 30% of our vehicles are essentially due for replacement. Our final goal in the strategic plan is to advocate for and be a trusted steward of public transportation. And thanks to our government affairs group, our communication group, and our marketing groups, the RTA organised and stood with transportation leaders and 5 federally elected officials in the region to express our need for stronger, more effective regional transportation capital funding actually it was a national event, but we hosted one here in Union Station called Stand Up for Transportation. The initiative urged Congress to support consistent long-term funding for the nation's transportation and public transit systems. For years, the Highway Trust Fund has been teetering on insolvency, and long-term sustainable legislation coupled with robust funding was vital to allowing the transit agencies to really plan for the future. Through our Getting America to Work coalition and our efforts in that program, a national coalition was created to bring together more than 100 transit agencies, business groups, and commuter advocacy organizations. And we were able to effectively play a critical role in the support of the 2 major federal pieces of legislation that passed in 2015. The FAST Act, as I've mentioned, which is the long-term federal transportation bill, which includes $61 billion in public transportation funds nationwide. The transportation law is critical to our region's continued success, as well as our ability to attempt to address our ongoing state of good repair needs. It is estimated that the increased funding levels in this bill could translate to more than $250 million for our region alone, so that's exciting over the next 5-year period. The second key bill that passed in 2015 was the PATH Act, which restored transit parity to $225 a month for employer-provided public transportation benefits, and keeps us on par with the benefit that was provided to people for parking benefits. Commuters who use this program not only save money by eliminating their federal taxes on that amount of money they pay, but the employers also save money in payroll taxes. And our work in this was really very critical, I think, in helping advance this issue in Congress. Some other highlights included the launching of the Ride On campaign that we have reported to you regularly is exceeding all of our expectations, has been nationally recognized, and is actually translating into actions by people who are seeing the ads and generating close to 1 million impressions and 800,000 conversions at a cost significantly lower than we anticipated. And when I say a conversion, that means they saw our ads, they clicked on the information, and they went ahead and planned a travel itinerary or looked at information specifically about a trip on the transit system. We'll continue to keep you posted on that. I also mentioned our efforts in terms of working with the City of Chicago, Metra, and CTA on Union Station, with our board approving a resolution for the $1.5 million of initial investment to fund the 13 upcoming transportation improvements associated with Union Station. So to highlight a few of our less outward-focusing efforts for the staff here at the RTA, but I think these are equally important activities. Human Resources completed a comprehensive job evaluation and classification project last year. An assessment of this compensation program was completed, resulting in all position descriptions being rewritten and an internal and market pay analysis completed, revisiting and refining our compensation philosophy, as well as designing and implementing a new classification program. HR also redefined the internal employee performance appraisal process, which we think is very important for us to have an ongoing dialogue between staff and supervisors on our efforts on an ongoing basis. But we have really set it up now to provide a more holistic approach in this performance appraisal, and really looking at employees' day-to-day activities and tying them with more strategic business objectives and providing accountability and clarity for our activities. We have a very talented staff here at the RTA, and to offer additional development opportunities, our HR staff continue to host a series of seminars, training classes, and information and on-site activities, and as well as online, in addition to the legally required mandatory training. So the RTA team also worked to make it easier for riders and legislators, stakeholders, and the general public to learn more about what we do. A newly redesigned website really makes it a lot easier for visitors and people coming to our site to learn more about the RTA and the transit system as a whole. The newly updated mapping statistics website, or RTAMS as we call it, continues to be a powerful transit information tool for riders and elected officials, as well as people who are working for our service boards and doing a lot of the planning and support work for us. We also collaborated with the service boards to establish the Greater Chicago Mass Transit Transparency and Accountability Portal on January 1st of this year. It went live January 1st this year, as required by the state mandate. The portal provides data related to expenditures, contracts, employee information on the RTA, CTA, Metra, and PACE, all in one site. Additionally, provides connections to the National Transit Database on safety information, all through that one sort of stop shopping location. All data on the portal is updated on a monthly basis, and we're really pleased about the level of cooperation and transparency that this unified website provides. The RTA also launched a blog called Ride On in 2015, and that has replaced our old-fashioned printed newsletter that we used to send out to people, as well as our e-newsletter that we send out to people. Our communications unit worked to develop this blog, and I hope that you will sign up to follow it. All that simply means is you'll get an email notify when we post something on the blog, and you can kind of keep track of some of the stuff that we are doing. But it's a great way for us to maintain dialogue with riders and others who are interested in what the RTA is doing. We also launched our Facebook, well, not launched, but we have expanded our Facebook and Twitter activities in the social media space. Our marketing group, who is really a group of two, greatly enhanced our social media standing. These RTA's social Facebook and Twitter accounts have grown. We now have more than 4,100 Facebook friends and 1,365 Twitter followers. That's the most the agency has ever had. And with the chairman and I now starting to tweet, yay, people are going to be so excited to follow all the exciting things that we are doing. Our marketing and communications staff have collaborated with the service boards and done some other activities. For example, the annual Dump the Pump event, which very great for us, just happened to fall on the same day as the Blackhawks rally. So an awful lot of people dumped the pump in 2015, but we were able to sort of leverage those two activities together and really get some good media coverage. Speaking of media coverage, the communications group, as well as some of our government affairs staff too, also have worked very well to get us a lot of positive news coverage, ranging from articles in regional and community newspapers, online publications, as well as national and Washington efforts as well. So now that we've looked back on 2015, it's time for us to really focus on looking forward. 2016 will obviously have its own series of challenges. The top of my list is the continuing fight, literally, for billions of dollars in capital funding that we require to address both our state of good repair backlog, as well as meet the region and the riders' needs for the transit system, the growing system going forward. As we have learned from the asset condition assessment, the RTA region has a tremendous backlog in terms of deferred maintenance of its assets. The cost to address the backlog is estimated at about $19.5 billion. Just as years of inadequate funding, state and federal funding, has resulted in this backlog, addressing it and eliminating it will take many years going forward. In addition, we need to invest about $1.6 billion annually over the next decade just to keep our system moving forward with normal capital reinvestments. What is most important is that we move onto a trajectory where we are starting to improve. That is where the backlog is starting to decrease. And to do this requires us to keep up with normal capital replacement and rehabilitation needs while chipping away at the backlog. And that translates to an annual funding amount of about $2 to $3 billion, more than twice the current funding levels that we have. With this range of funding, we can hope to achieve the full state of good repair with no backlog in about 20 to 30 years. So I'm not being kind of crazy when I'm not sort of trying to overreach, but I mean, that's the outlook that we have. So what about enhancing the system? The service boards are doing what they can, of course. All of them are modernizing where they can and implementing new technologies to really help advance us. But there is so much more that needs to be done. Addressing speed and reducing travel times, increasing capacity where we can handle increasing passenger demand, finding new ways to modernize our system. Last year, the RTA programmed approximately $1 billion worth of capital projects with no funding from the state, as I mentioned. This number was still below the amount we need to invest to address our state of good repair needs. And this number was only achieved, as I mentioned, by the CTA creatively and effectively obtaining a federal TIFIA loan, which has to be repaid, the RTA and PACE and Metra issuing combinations of bonds and other financing tools to advance projects. Metra also implemented a fare increase to support their modernization and fund and other efforts that PACE did to fund their South Division garage to fuel buses with natural gas. So where are we now as 26 gets underway? Our capital program continues to struggle, and the state financial situation has restricted future funding and limited the availability of funds for past commitments. Our capital, as I mentioned earlier, the RTA and the service boards are working closely with IDOT to manage that cash flow and really keep the essential projects moving forward. In December, we received the good news, as I discussed, that the state is issuing $480 million, $480 million worth of bonds just last week, and to really try to keep some of those projects moving forward. The end of last year, as I said, with the Federal FAST Act, which included $61 billion in federal transportation funding, increased the levels of funding that could translate to more than $250 million over the 5 years for our region. And this is good, but it's not enough. The capital program this board approved in December included $872 million in capital funding for 2016, and that's about half of what we need each year. The additional $250 million in federal funding will help, but it is being outpaced by our needs. We in transit are pretty industrious. The CTA plans to further issue about $357 million in bonds in 2016. Metra plans to issue about $200 million in bonds over the next 5 years, and PACE plans to issue about $51 million in bonds in the next coming few years. The RTA will also continue to bond to its capacity. We are not alone in this, of course, and we have strong relationships with many of our partners and other transportation agencies that really we will be coordinating with and collaborating with to advocate for our region's infrastructure needs. And public transportation is absolutely one key part of that. To that end, the RTA is working with the service boards to develop a more comprehensive capital strategy for transit investment, and we look forward to working with other groups in order to convey the importance of the transit system and the infrastructure of our region and the state economy, and work towards increased and stable capital funding as the state works on these activities. Of course, we are hopeful that the budget impasse in Springfield will end and our operating funding will continue uninterrupted, and we've seen some good signs on some of that front. As the chairman has said many times, we inherited an invaluable system, but no one should lose sight of what we need to maintain it and, dare I say, enhance it. Should we dream? I think we should, a little bit, but in a responsible way. An annual funding level between $2 to $3 billion would allow us to make substantial progress, not just address the backlog, but maintain it and help move us forward. This level of funding would enable substantial project progress in achieving state of good repair and would contribute to modernizing and enhancing the system. Key projects of regional significance in the RTA's capital program that could really be programmed at adequate funding levels with those types of monies would include full rail and bus fleet renewal, CTA red and purple modernization, Metra positive train control implementation, and PACE's arterial rapid bus system that they've planned. As the CTA continues to replace 100-year-old station, Metra replaces cars purchased in the Eisenhower administration. Keeping up isn't good enough. We have to find a way to get ahead of the curve, and that takes commitment as well as money. If there was ever a time to do it, I think it is now. We have unprecedented collaboration and, as some would say, unprecedented challenges. I have tremendous faith that we will accomplish much together. I look forward to working with all of you in 2016 as we advance our efforts. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Excellent report. Anybody have any comments or questions for Leanne? I guess I just have a couple of comments. First of all, I think it was a very good year. We have tremendous staff. and the cooperation is unprecedented. You know, as I watch what takes place in our city and our state, the RTA very proudly is a model for regional and bipartisan cooperation. We, unlike much of the state of Illinois and the city, we have a nearly perfect credit rating, which was once again affirmed by Wall Street, and our credit rating is among the strongest in America. You know, mass transit, I believe, is one of the major reasons that Chicago, over the past 2 years, has led all of America in corporate relocation. We have obviously a wonderful location. We have O'Hare Airport. We have a great university system in this state. But whenever Mayor Emanuel goes out and tries to sell corporations on moving to Chicago, mass transit is an integral part. And there was a story in yesterday's Sun-Times, again, pointing out millennials are a different animal. They're going to be half our workforce in a couple of years, and millennials take mass transit. They expect it. I just read a piece in Governing Magazine about Seattle's strategy on mass transit, and we want to keep the best and the brightest of our young recent graduates and people here. And mass transit is more critical than ever, and it returns a 4-to-1 at least return on every dollar that we invest. But no pun intended, it was a great year, and we did move forward on some things. Capital is, as Leanne said, what it's all about this year, and you know, you'll see me writing and preaching and doing everything I can to talk about our backlog, a need for improvements on our state of good repair, but also things to move our region forward as we compete with New York, which spends twice as much per capita as we do, and Texas and Utah, conservative Utah, investing heavily in mass transit. And there has never been a time in the American economy where mass transit has been more important than it is today. And all of Chicagoland's future depends upon an RTA that is reliable and comfortable and cutting edge. So, but it was a really good year under very difficult circumstances. And again, I applaud all of you. Not only are we a bipartisan board, we're a regional board as well, and the cooperation regionally and politically is unprecedented. And I hope other units of governance in this great state are sort of watching the way we operate. But thank you, Leanne, and to all your staff. Okay, item 6 are the consent items as they appear on the board agenda. 6A is the ordinance approving the time extension for the ICE projects, which we heard about earlier in committee. Are there any questions, suggestions? Can I have a motion on approving that? Director Fuentes moves, seconded by Director Michael Lewis, that we approve that. Is there leave for the attendance roll call? It's a consent item.
13 ayes and 3 absent.
Trione, it's great to hear your voice.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that is so approved. Item 7 is the Integrated Mobility Management Program. It's 7A on our agenda, and that's the actual contract. I think this may take a supermajority vote. No. But anyway, I expect it to probably pass with that supermajority. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify that with council that we didn't need that. Is there a question, anything on this one that we didn't cover in committee? And again, I thank you all for coming to the committees, even though you're not necessarily an official member. It's great to have you come to the full committees. Is there a motion on 7A? Director Friga?
Are we doing, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, are
Yes.
we taking the contract and procurement items together?
We'll do them, let's do them separately, Audrey. This is just 7A, which is the actual contract for the Integrated Mobility Management Program. Director Friga moves, seconded by Director Melvin, that we approve the ordinance on the Integrated Mobility Management Program. There leave for the attendance roll call. Seeing no objection, leave is granted, and that will be so approved, I think, 13-0, right, Audrey?
Correct. 13 ayes and 3 absent.
And 7B is the ordinance authorizing the temporary staffing for the Human Resource and Mobility Services Program. Director Ross moves. We adopt it. Seconded by Director Buchanan. Is there leave for the attendance roll call on that? Seeing no objection, leave is granted there, and both of those items and item 7 are approved. Thank you. New business. Any new business to come before the board? I want to remind you that our next date, it's hard to believe, will be into February, post-Valentine's Day. Thursday, February 18th, starting with committees at 8:30. Our regular meeting followed those committee meetings, followed by those committee meetings. But February 18th, make sure it's on your schedule. In an executive session, we have an executive session today with that is an important one. And Nadine, why don't you give us our reasons for the exception that we go into executive session?
If the board would vote to adjourn from executive session, we could then move into the closed portion of the meeting pursuant to subsection 2C21 of the Open Meetings Act.
And I don't see anything that will require us to come back as a full board after that. So with that, Director Durante moves that we adjourn, seconded by Director Hobson. And all those signify by going into executive session across the hall. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Got a quick comment.